otherwise.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of SEO Fight Club. I'm saying hello in the YouTube chat. Today we have a lesson or observations, and we're going to be taking a look at AI detection again, because it's that time to kind of revisit, what's going on in that space. And so Lee has put together this awesome slide deck of analysis and observations. And so we're all going to see this together for the first time. So Lee, I'll let you take it away.
All right, let's go through the old boilerplate. So Carolyn, I know, is not here today. So let's see, Clint. Let's see, is Clint on yet? Let me just peek.
This is Carl.
No.
Hello.
All right. So for SEO this week, if you haven't seen it, see it. It's pretty damn cool. It's what is it? Monday mornings. So it's a good thing to look at. Also, next tested SEO training starts a week from tomorrow. So if you're interested in it, just ping me on Skype. Easy to find me. We got a good group shaping up this time, and hopefully this time Google does not drop an update in the middle of the training. That made for some excitement last time. So we're going to do a little bit of background information. First, we're going to talk a little bit about large language models, which, is ChatGPT and a lot of the others. The thing about large language models is they are designed to understand language so that they can respond as a human would. They're largely designed to just predict language one word at a time. So when you give it a prompt, ChatGPT or any of the others, it spits back what it would anticipate that a human would respond in a way that a human would respond. So it's designed just to make sure that the language is coherent. Now, this doesn't mean that the information that comes out of it is necessarily true or accurate, but it needs to be just coherent. So those are large language models. And, even if you ask ChatGPT in its own words, do you predict things one word at a time? Yeah, it gives you a nice thing. Yes, most large language models, such as the GPTs, predict one word at a time. And it talks about autoregressive language modeling and how it's done and so forth. So one of the common misunderstandings about large language models is they don't actually go out and research. They're already pre-trained on information, and they're trying to utilize that information to respond to user prompts. So here's how the autoregressive language modeling works. If we have a statement here, so we got, good morning, how. If we look at the word are, the word are is the most likely word to come next. Now it could have been how about, how is, how's, how did, and a whole bunch of others in there. But are is statistically the most likely next word. And here, this is just toolglitter.io. It shows the word in green because that means it appears in the top 10 most likely responses. So here it's in the number 1 position, but if it was in the top 10, it would be in green. If it was 11 to 100, it would be yellow. 101 to 1,000 would be red. And if it's outside the top 1,000, be purple. So given that we've written are, good morning, how are, you becomes the next most likely term. And so that's in green, and you can see the probability in this particular model is 0.577, but it could be, how are we, how are things, how are your, because, it could be asking about how are your kids, how's the family, how are things going, how are things at work, whatever. So it just keeps doing this sort of recursive until it outputs the text that we see. Now, ChatGPT is a specialized version of these large language models because it was trained to be more conversational, whereas GPT in general are trained on a large corpus of internet documents. ChatGPT was trained on conversational documents, so it more closely mimics human conversational style. So that's where we get better output from ChatGPT than other GPT models, because it is designed to be much more conversational. So here's how it looks, the whole system. You have the training data set, and the large language model is developed based on the training data. So it's trained to understand words, semantics, topics, etc., which is why you can ask it about what is SEO, and it doesn't write an output about wool socks or things like that. It stays pretty much on topic, but it can stay on topic to the degree that that information is available in the training data. So now we have a user that comes along and gives it a prompt, tell me about SEO. The large language model takes that prompt, interprets it based on what it's learned from the training data, and then generates an output to you, which is the response that it has. So ultimately, the large language model is limited by its training corpus. Now, this is the thing that's interesting to me, and there was a special thing, which is why I developed this particular show today, was the limits of the corpus become intriguing in certain circumstances. So ChatGPT, it says, even though it's predicting one word at a time, because of the way it's done, it can generate coherent and contextually relevant responses. What it means, it's a plausible fake. It's trying to mimic human response learned from the corpus. Now that's really, go ahead, Ted.
Oh, I was going to say this has been like the holy grail that I had been looking for in SEO for like a decade. And you might have heard prior to ChatGPT that I would talk about plausible content.
Yes.
Content that is arguably real. And so, yeah, this has just been systematized to a point where they can generate plausible content. And so this is the actual technology emerging that we would discuss in past years.
Yeah, now the nice thing is, because it is a statistical model, so if we look at SEO, if we were to write something about SEO, there's a corpus and there's a bell curve of information within that particular corpus. And so ChatGPT, as it generates its response, will tend to generate it towards the middle of the bell curve. It'll tend to generate it towards the average of the corpus documents there. So you give it a good prompt, it's going to give you a nice general middle of the road answer designed to sound like a human wrote it, or spoke it conversationally or wrote it conversationally. So it's a plausible fake, but what it doesn't do is it doesn't verify. Like, everything that's in the corpus from a large language model perspective is true. It doesn't do any sort of validation of it. It just takes the documents, go, yep, this is what we know, and so here's what we're going to write about.
Yeah, for example, I've seen lots of hallucinations. Like, I've seen hallucinations in ChatGPT where it would analyze my website and it would turn around and write a summary that says that I offer free software, which I don't. I don't offer free software at all. And so that's actually a hallucination. So there are two things in detection to be aware of. One is, can they detect the statistics in play, which is kind of what has already been hinted at. But then there's also fact checking the data. So if you're going to use ChatGPT to write your history paper, you better hope it doesn't hallucinate or you're going to feel really stupid. So just remember that not all the detection is based on, can we detect the statistics in play? The other way, the way that teachers are going to look at it, is they're going to fact check your data and look for hallucinations. And I even saw in the BERT mum integration stuff that Google has been using, where Google would rewrite titles. So Google's using some NLP to rewrite titles in the search results. I've even seen that hallucinate. and claim to offer free legal services for lawyers who do not offer free legal services.
Right.
Because there are so many lawyers that'll give you a free consultation, and consultations by I guess relationship are a service, then it becomes free legal services for DUIs. And so, you can even see it in Google's older school AI stuff that they can hallucinate.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting ones for me, one of the more interesting hallucinations is, again, ChatGPT is writing statistically based on what it expects to see. And if it doesn't have a lot in the corpus to go on in the specific topic, it'll go for ancillary topics. So if I asked it, what is the best research paper on link building for San Diego roofers, it might sit there and say, link building in San Diego roofing, an overview in the Journal of SEO Econometrics. And I'm like, I didn't know there was a Journal of SEO Econometrics. There's not, but because it's looking for a journal and what is a plausible answer, that becomes a plausible answer.
And this type of hallucination, it is probably a new methodology for being able to find customers. Like, you can go into a space where lawyers do not offer free service for DUI cases, and you can look for the hallucinations and then go and say to these lawyers, hey, do you realize that Google is saying you offer free legal services for DUIs? You should really get an SEO to fix that. And so, yeah, it's probably another way to get in the door, because you can show what Google is doing with a website, and people probably don't even know Google's doing those rewrites.
Yeah, so now that we have sort of an overview of sort of how the system works, how a large language model is trained from its corpus, and how it interacts with user prompts and outputs things, we get some interesting things that come. So I asked ChatGPT to write me something about search engine. What is search engine optimization? It gives me this: SEO stands for search engine optimizations, process of improving websites, blah, 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 blah. You can see here in literally most of these words are green, which means that they're very predictable statistically. So here I chose core SEO software I pulled from Ted's page. And you can see here that there's a lot more red and purple, even the yellow there is there. So you can see, like, over here in this histogram, most of the words here are predictable with 90 to 100% accuracy, which is very, very green and very, very predictable. Over here, there's a lot less that are very, there's a lot more of these things that ChatGPT is not predicting as the next word. So that sort of unusual behavior is more human-like. It's more random. So it's more likely, given this tool, that ChatGPT, the one on the left, was very likely AI written. The one on the right is not AI written. So you can sort of visually see it based on the amount of green or the lack of red and purple. But now we can go into originality.ai. It's one of the better detectors out there. It's got a lot of data that shows that it's better than a lot of its competition, and it does some things differently. So let's find out. Did Ted write the Chorus sales page? Ted, do you want to make any predictions?
Filthy web spammer. I think we can all agree.
Nope, you wrote it. You can't blame ChatGPT for your mess, sir. And you can sort of
try.
You can see it's 99%, it's saying it's original, it's human written, 1% AI written.
And the funny thing is when I ask ChatGPT to rewrite it, I actually feel like, in many respects, it makes a more readable page. It communicates more concisely and clearly. And
Right.
so in a number of dimensions, and there are multiple dimensions to content, obviously, but in a number of those dimensions, I actually feel like it does better than I do. And I think a lot of the content writers that are out there that are, I write my own content and it's so much better than AI, sure, it's more flowery, it's more poetic, but there are other dimensions to it too.
Right.
Yeah, so keep in mind you have to look at it from a number of different angles to say which is better at what.
Exactly. So here's the interesting thing. This is where I was going with this. If AI models are designed to mimic the training corpus, which they are, can corpus documents be mistaken as AI generated? And there was an example of this that let me go down this rabbit hole. So let's start with some text. Dickens, A Tale of Two Cities. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. What are we thinking? What do you think, Ted? AI written, not AI written?
Let me think here. So, Tale of Two Cities. It's a lot of green, but there's a fair amount of red. It's light on purple. I think because it's light on purple, it's going to say it's a little bit AI written. So not mostly.
Yep, 20%. Originality AI says 20% chance that it was AI written, 80% chance it was human written. And the interesting thing, I'm just going to note this for later on. When you look here, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. That sentence, is very common. So it's very, very green. It's very, very predictable sentence because it's very common in our language and a lot of our writing.
So does that mean to say that if it gets quoted a lot, it gets predicted more?
Yes, exactly. We'll see a little bit more of that. So if we look at Harry Potter, J.K. Rowling's book, pulled some stuff out of there. Bam, a lot of color in that.
So
Says,
hang on
yeah,
a second. I'm
yeah.
just thinking outside the box here. Didn't mean to derail.
No, you're fine.
But does that potentially mean that there's an exploit avenue for if you want to drive a fact, you need to quote it a lot everywhere?
As long as that fact quoted everywhere, that everywhere gets into the training corpus, yes, it becomes predicted text. I won't say fact, it just becomes repeatable.
So that would mean that when you're syndicating your new fact that you want to be quoted by AI, you would want to avoid websites that are using bot detection on appliances or Cloudflare, because those won't be included in the common crawl that these tools are using to do the learning.
Yeah, an interesting thing that I've been thinking about for a while, and we don't know yet because we haven't seen how the training of these large language models are going to evolve, is how do you impact the corpus? But that is an important piece. So
Yeah,
look at,
interesting.
yeah, so J.K. Rowling Harry Potter does not look like it was AI written. And let's go with Tolkien's The Hobbit.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, no way on this one. There's a 0% chance. It's a very complex language and so forth. And
Yeah.
a lot of fiction does not show up as AI written because it does. It's a story that goes along unusual arcs, which is, creative expression.
And Tolkien went further than probably anybody to make his word choices so deliberate and intentional that
Right.
I'm surprised there's not even more red in it than this.
Well, it probably depends on the passage selected. I just grabbed the very first part of the book. I figured that would be the one that would be quoted most often, but we'll see. Now let's get to something that's a little more common.
Oh, AI.
Well, you might be surprised. So here, when you look at it, this only has a 21% chance of being AI detected, AI content. But you'll notice there that it's displaying two different ways. There is an orange section up here, which tends to be more towards AI, and there's a green section down here. Why? Because this part up here is more often quoted, is what I'm suggesting. And so if I just pull that section and trim it, now it's a 50% likely that AI wrote it. Now you think, all right, well, why is that? Well, anything that deals with the Second Amendment tends to quote it. And you're not just talking about blogs, you're not just talking about, gun activists, you're talking about websites, legal websites, case law, precedents that all reference any amendment, not just this one, first, second, it doesn't matter. They're going to reference those specific passages over and over again. These are going to appear just an inordinate amount of times in the training docs. So
this notion of quoting is interesting because I've always wondered about AI detection, because I could ask AI to write a list of alphabetical state names.
mm-hmm.
All right. And how would that differ from a human list of alphabetical state names? Well, if you know all the states, there will be zero difference between AI and human generated content. So the nature of what's being asked, it's interesting because if I did a list of favorite colors, I mean, I'm sure AI could generate one and it would be 100% AI, generated content. But does any of this apply to lists of things? Are lists of things an exception then? Because
I don't
enforce detection in any fashion on an alphabetical list of state names. Mm-hmm. Even if it said it was 100% AI, what could you take away from a list of things?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I haven't played with that. I was playing with different particular ones, and here I'm going to give you an interesting example. The next one, the preamble to the Constitution.
Yeah. See, this makes what you ask like exempt. So if your school asked you to recite the preamble to the Constitution, it would fail AI detection.
Right. Now, here's the interesting thing about this. It struck me when I did this how green this was.
Yeah, it's remarkable because it's the most commonly quoted part.
Yeah, so let's go to another slide here, where if you just look at the word union, it's capitalized, and in the prediction, it's capitalized at 87%. Like, it's not the lowercase, it's the uppercase, which is the way it's written in the original document. So it's so oft quoted like this that it becomes, there's no other word really.
And that's interesting because that means you could impact your score by making human mistakes, like forgetting to capitalize United States.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, would that make it human if you changed the case on United States? Like, I want to go back in and test that.
Yeah, and there's probably none of the thing is, I'm not after AI detection here. There's a lot of problems with that. And I actually think that Honey's doing some research that may end up in another episode. He's dealing with AI detection in a more robust way.
Because just from this example alone, I could see the birth of a new set of WordPress plugins, humanizers.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be a plugin that'll forget to capitalize something. It'll be a plugin that puts a random typo every 700 words. It'll take out a word that's too common and replace it with a more rare synonym. I mean, you could have just a plugin that's a humanizer for your AI blog.
Yeah. Let me see. I was looking over here. Jordan is saying there's lower options for variables for lists of states. OpenAI is parsed from multiple variables. Yep. How much does the age of the content matter? The Constitution is older than other author examples. I'm not sure that it's the age of the content as the frequency with which it appears in the training set. So things that are more quoted, because I found there were certain things that were problematic for it, and we'll go over some of those in a minute. So some of the older stuff, there's newer stuff in there as well. Let's see, JP, grammar is detected on how the entity is detected. United, uppercase United versus lowercase is a big difference. Yeah, it would be.
Yep.
It absolutely would be.
Yeah, same thing for Polish and Polish. And especially when you get Polish, then it gets really confusing.
Yeah, capitalization matters. But anyway, if you're looking at this, it was pretty interesting to me as that, the detection of this, even with something that is as more refined as originality AIs. So let's look at some more famous examples. This is actually the one that started me off, the Bible, Genesis 1.
Oh, totally AI.
Totally AI written. God wrote the Bible with ChatGPT. That's the way
it's it's remarkable because it's totally based on how often it's been quoted online.
Right.
That's the reason. It's not to say that it came from an alien spacecraft. It's to say that it's been quoted so much that it's very predictive.
You, sir, are a spacecraft denier. This
Yes,
is proof.
I'm denying the mothership.
But it's really, this is actually what started me down this rabbit hole. Somebody had posted, that the Genesis, sort of was AI written. I was like, I wonder why it's giving that particular false positive. And then we started to go down this particular thing. So other common things, like there's another Bible, the 23rd Psalm, the Lord is my shepherd, blah, blah, blah. AI written. It's the degree to which it appears in the corpus. More fun stuff. The Hungry Caterpillar, children's book, AI written.
Yep.
Now, this one is troubling because it's not just because it appears. I think it's because the language here is simple language, because it does have problems with simple language as well. So I don't know if it's because of the frequency that this appears, or whether it's just the simplicity of the language that triggers the AI designation.
Yeah, and a lot of these detection tools, they will have word limits to try to avoid that problem. They'll want 1,000 words, or some minimum amount of words to be significant.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, if you used a 12 sentence children's book, you can't really do the same analysis.
The interesting thing is, while I was playing around with this, I was playing around with excerpts of different sizes. So if I had, 200 words, it would be AI. If I went with, 500, including the same 200, it would be not AI. And then if I went to 700, it would be AI. It just depends on what appears in those terms. So you can actually probably have different pages of books, which this one was written by human, this was written by, AI, at least as far as the AI detector is concerned. Green eggs and ham. What do you think, Ted? Any predictions?
It looks pretty AI.
Actually, no score. It can't score sentences that short, which is the problem of scoring children's books that I discovered. And if I made one of these sentences long enough so that it was actually, 8 or 10 or 12 words, then it could score the whole thing, but I didn't want to alter the author's documents. MLK's I Have a Dream. He didn't write that. 98% AI written.
Kicked out of school.
Yep, you'd be kicked out of school for that. Lorem Ipsum. Now, this particular block of text.
That Is this random or is this the original Latin?
This is the original back from the 1500s. It's been appearing in typeset documents since, its original development at that time. So this particular block is the one that's AI written. It's not all lorem. And so this you see a lot. So even originality AI says, that's AI written. Because again, it appears so frequently in the corpus. I was just trying to think of what are all the things that appear a lot of times in a training set that would trigger AI detection. So here's a fun one. I wrote a short story. Early one morning, Ted walked slowly to my office and looked around. "Good morning, Ted. How are you?" I said. "I'm fine," Ted replied. "It's great to see you. Can I get you something to drink?" I asked. "Some water would be great." "I can make some coffee if that would be better." "No, I'm trying to cut down on caffeine," Ted sighed. "Sorry to hear that. I couldn't work without caffeine." The conversation went on and on and on and on. "I miss caffeine," Ted said. "Shut up and drink your glass of water," I replied. "I'm trying to get some work done." Ted sat quietly drinking his water and thinking about the coffee he missed. He was sad. Ted's sadness began to affect my work.
Now, this looks like you wrote it to go green. Like you probably went back and took out red and purple where you could.
No, actually, the thing is, the original one that I had to do is I had to add and looked around to make this sentence long enough. Originally, it didn't trigger. It was like a children's book. Once I got one long sentence in there, then all of a sudden it would score it. But it's very common words and phrases. The whole thing is composed of very common words and phrases. "How are you?" "I am fine," blah, 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 this sort of thing. So again, if you write stories about that, and one of the things that was interesting was I had an idea. There was, I took the, something that ChatGPT had written, and I threw it into a tool and said, "What author do I write like?" And it gave me the author, and I went and started scoring some of their passages. And while it was human written, it was a high percentage of AI, high probability of AI. So, there are people whose style is simplistic, and as such, it can be mistaken as AI generated.
All right. I have one of the more common prompts for defeating AI detection here. I'm gonna read it so that we can talk about it in the context of what you've shown. Sound like fun?
Okay. Sounds like fun to me.
All right, so I am literally gonna read the prompt that you use to defeat most of these detectors today. May not work in the future if you're a time traveler and you're looking at this in the future. All right, so here it goes. When it comes to writing content, two factors are crucial: perplexity and burstiness. Perplexity measures the complexity of the text. Separately, burstiness compares the variations of sentences. Humans tend to write with greater burstiness, for example, with some longer or complex sentences alongside shorter ones. AI sentences tend to be more uniform. Therefore, when writing the following content I am going to ask you to create, I need it to have a good amount of perplexity and burstiness. Do you understand? And that's a prompt for getting around this aspect. What do you think about perplexity and burstiness?
Well, I'm going to go back to a couple of things. One is I don't think Google's detecting any sort of AI content at the beginning. I'm just looking at the problem of AI detection in this. But I think that those two factors can modify the default outputs of AI. And it's funny that you should say that, because when I was looking at this yesterday, I found on a website that discussed perplexity, burstiness, and a third factor that is in OpenAI's documentation, which is temperature. And temperature is a degree of randomness in there. So if you ask it to ChatGPT to write beyond its default levels of perplexity, burstiness, and temperature, it can, depending on how far it turns it up, make something that's very creative, or goes way the frick off the rails, which they had some examples of. But you can always, have it, rein it back in, rewrite that with, a little bit lower levels of, those three things. The funny thing was that I found this particular article on utilizing that on a website dedicated to defeating AI detection in academic settings. These were students' websites that were talking about how to defeat AI detection so you could have ChatGPT do your homework. So, one of the things that is funny that Honey and I've had a number of conversations in recent days about is all the work that's going into it from universities and other professional settings to try to identify AI content is going to be defeated by middle schoolers who are just sitting there and going, all right, how does this work? How can we bypass it? How does it work? You don't even need to be high school or collegiate level. You're having people that are very, very young figuring out ways of defeating this because they're understanding how the AI generates and how the detectors work. So you have an army of people dedicated to defeating, the problem of identifying AI content.
Now, if you're a student and you're about to invest hundreds of hours into being able to pull this stuff off, it's not going to last very long. And I'll tell you why. Because the teachers are going to change how they teach. And so odds are the teachers are going to turn this game around on you. They're going to use ChatGPT to write a paper, and then they're going to ask you, the students, to fact check it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't get the correct and incorrect facts out of it, then you're going to be in some trouble. So what's happening right now is everybody has a failure of imagination. The schools are panicking. Oh no, what are we going to do? The students are like, let's figure out how to defeat detection so we can get away with the shenanigans. And both sides are failing to realize that it's going to be an arms race that's going to go back and forth forever. But you're likely not going to win on any one strategy. All strategies fail.
Yeah. Eventually, that is absolutely true. So here's an interesting thing. I'm going to show you one more piece on this just to add to the conversation. First, we know that AI detection fails with things that appear frequently within the training corpus, which gives you avenues of, if we can impact the training corpus with stuff, if we can put a fact in there enough times, it becomes a fact. Or as more SEOs would think along these lines, if I want to be the best plumber in Oklahoma City, if I'm out there saying that I'm the best plumber in Oklahoma City on enough different sites, then it's true as far as AI generation is concerned. Simple language also fails, which is why the original work and children's works and people that write in simple styles often wonder about documents that are done with the Hemingway app, because those tend to be shorter sentences. They tend to be more concise. They're also making themselves probably more vulnerable to being labeled as AI, although I haven't tested all of that. So here's the fun thought experiment. AI tools, they're outputting similar to the corpus, and as we get more and more AI generated content out there, the corpus becomes more AI-like over time. Everything looks like AI because it will continue to just build upon itself. And so if things are repeated enough times in enough different ways, then over time, original text becomes AI, flagged as AI. So here's a great example of it. This is Google Search Essentials. It's getting dangerously close to being flagged as AI content because it is written about over and over and over again. So the more white hats write about how you should follow these guidelines, and here are the guidelines, the more this becomes AI content. Kind of a weird little reversal on that.
Yeah, and that just basically means that Google is going to have forgiveness for anything that is widely quoted. And you'd think that they would. You'd think that widely quoted would be a positive ranking factor. It's just like backlinks, right? If people are quoting you all the time, that's an authority signal. That's a trust signal. So I fail to see how being widely quoted would be something that Google would have a strong interest in punishing. And so that's another reason why AI detection seems like a waste of time and money on their part. Like, there has to be a better way. From the engineering side, it's just so flawed in its current state that this can't be a system of doling out punishment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, really, this all started because I saw somebody say, the Bible is AI generated. And I'm like, really? Why would that be? What is it that's triggering that sort of stuff? And going down the particular rabbit hole, it is the frequency with which stuff appears. Now, I would imagine that over time, when a corpus gets large enough and, documents get similar enough, not even quoting, but similar enough in terms of content, that they would also be flagged because they would look very much like everything else in there. The words, the synonyms are predictable. The variations are predictable. So even not the original document, it's close enough in intent and in structure that it looks like it was AI written.
And we see that all the time in SEO. We go into a keyword like, Houston SEO, and we see that all the websites are tuning to the same standards. They're using the same words, using the same entities, using the same densities. Just, it looks like a horizontal line when we look at the stats in a keyword like that.
Right. Yeah, everybody's got the same sort of topical coverage, the same, sections on their page, the same keyword density, all of it. It's, it's basically everybody's paraphrasing everybody in some form or fashion. But they're doing it manually, so it's human written, right? So, we have any questions from the YouTube stuff? I'm not looking at YouTube right now.
Oh, yeah, I've got it open. It's all over the place. So I figure we'll just run the list, and some will be on topic, some will be off. Sound okay?
Good of me.
All right. So let's see. What is your framework for choosing tier 2 and 3 link anchors? Generally, all right, so I started playing around with this a little bit recently, trying to set up a test. And so what I've found is that, if you're getting like, say, 25 backlinks and you set up your tier 2, so the 25 links going to your money site, they each have 25 links, or maybe they burst up to 50, and then those each get, 100 links. Very quickly, you're getting into a network of tens of thousands of backlinks. All right. So a dangerous thing to do, because if you do it wrong, mistakes can be made. But it's also a powerful thing to do, because that's what authority assets look like. And authority assets are really good at ranking things. And so when you have enterprise SEO, they're leveraging an authority asset. They spend no time doing backlinks because they get to spend the authority they've already mustered into a pile. And so that's what these schemes are kind of designed to do, is to build an authority asset that you can then spend on something. And so out at tier 2, tier 3, it tends to be really garbagey. You're protected. So if it's money site tier 2 is the next level, some SEOs say money site tier 1. So depending upon how you define those. So for me, tier 2, it goes money site tier 2. At tier 2, you're very careful and deliberate. You're picking things that you own and control. That way, if there's ever a mess, you can clean it up by deleting the pages or the links. I recommend you don't delete the pages, actually. Delete the links, let the page live on. It's just faster, cleaner, better that way. If you nuke the page, you can create a phantom problem that is no longer observable, but still resides in the system and won't repair itself. And that's why deleting the page can be bad. But you go a level beyond that. So tier 2, so money site, tier 2, you control. Tier 3, you're starting to dabble in things you have less control over. Might be social websites, stacks, guest posting, niche edits, all kinds of shady business. You get out beyond that tier 4, you're commonly talking about link building services that'll generate links and authority that are kind of more chaotic and messy, and you have no control to clean up. Very dangerous territory, but you're guarded by so many intermediate pages that it probably doesn't matter. You could always hit an undo button. So, when you're talking about tiered link building, those early ones that are close to the money site, it's all about control, because number one rule, never make a mess you can't clean up. What do you think, Lee?
I like relevant variations. So whatever I'm building links to, the links, I want the anchor text to be just relevant variations for what I'm trying to rank for. And, that goes for all tiers.
Yeah, and you can actually use these tiered pages to launder. So if you've got access to a domain with 50,000 backlinks on cats, you can route them through a dog page and launder some of that authority into the proper context. Now, it's not an efficient laundering, but it's a better than none laundering of context. And so, yeah, keep in mind that laundering works with links and money. Not to suggest you should commit a crime, but I mean, with the links, it's technically not a crime. It's just a guideline. All right. So, how different is your approach to page optimization when Google is testing you up versus testing you down? Well, make sure that Google is consistently testing you down. So only in the red. So they're talking about the volatility tool in Cora most likely here. So you would want to see only red, never green. You'd run the report several times, and every time it's always your most common rank position or worse. And so if your chart trends like that over and over and over again, studying has shown that case is about 70% predictive of the direction your website is going to move in a month's time. So if you are repeatedly only being tested downwards, you need to act. Otherwise, there's pretty decent chance you're going to drop. So yeah, if I saw that, I would be worried, but definitely check more than once, because you can get random outcomes. What do you think, Lee? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was going to say my approach to optimization doesn't change based on whether I'm stable, being tested up, being tested down. I have targets that I want to hit independent of what Google's currently doing or thinks of my page. So I have the idea of the page that I want to create, and I move in that direction. And it's not really dependent upon anything other than just straight math. So I don't, the environment about what Google doing, what's not doing, which way is it going, I don't care.
And And there's a phenomenon with tools that when you're just learning, tools kind of behave like an accelerator. It's a gas pedal. So it's like, oh, I got Cora and it gave me this big list of things I need to put the gas down on. And so you dive into it, but eventually you develop your own sense for what works. And it's like you don't need to be told where to apply the accelerator. Like, you know how to do that. And the tools then turn around, they become efficiency devices. They turn into the brakes and they tell you when to stop investing in things you've already won. Don't waste your time there, switch to something different. And so, yeah, eventually these tools, they'll change from being the gas pedal to being the brakes. And so just note that it evolves. And not everybody's at the same point. So somebody who just got Cora, they're stomping on the gas. All right. Is there any way to trigger Google to start shuffling the SERP around without making major changes to the page? Well, if you don't mind dropping in rankings, that's easy. There's not an easy way to go up in the rankings without making any sort of a change. Now you've limited it to changes to a page, and I wonder, does that include the off page, because it's kind of to a page but not on the page. So yeah, you could do it off page. There's also under the page, so there's what people visibly see, and you could leave that all the same, and you could alter the page with schema, you could alter it with hidden content, you could alter it with supplemental content and a sidebar and a footer. All of those things can affect a page's ranking as well without mucking with the main content. Like, you don't have to always SEO the main content. That's a misconception. Thoughts, Lee?
No, I think that's fair.
All right, we don't have Clint today, so he must have had client calls this morning. So I am going to wait on a Clint question till Clint is here. So we'll re-ask that next week. Let's see. Does redirect links still send link juice? Yes. A redirect is technically another layer of linking. So imagine, if you will, there's a filter in place between each layer of linking, and that filter takes out a certain percentage of what gets through. And so each layer of linking filters a bit, and a redirect would be an additional layer of linking. Now, my guesstimate, and it's only a guesstimate because I don't know what Google's doing on their site, is that the filter amount is somewhere between 15 and 30%. And this is why it's easy to rank category pages and hard to rank product pages, because most of your backlinks are to the home page that link through categories first to get to products. And so products get the smallest amount of that love. Now, that didn't used to be true. It used to be that it would pass through and we could play long tail games all day long, but those days are gone. So now it's a bit harder. And so redirects can do damage if you do too many of them. Any thoughts on that, Lee?
No, nothing to add on that.
All right. Does it work to do article submissions? Yeah, link's a link, especially if it's a relevant link. I haven't seen any manual actions about article submissions and syndicated content. I mean, it's been a long time since I've seen somebody, get into the penalty box by just trying to syndicate real content. So I would argue that it does work, and links are hard enough to get that you probably don't want to say no unless there's a really good reason to say no. So if it's an average link and other people are ranking fine from them, then it becomes the most common question in SEO. If they can do it, why can't I? And there may be an answer why you can't. So I don't know all situations, but in general, links are good. Thoughts on that, Lee?
Yeah, I think a lot of times people are looking for sort of the magic thing. Is a cloud link better than a PBN link, better than an article link, than a citation link, than a guest post link? They're all the same. If structured, they're all basically the same. So don't look at categories of links in that way. Just think, is it a good relevant link for my site, wherever it is? And if that works for you, good, go for it.
Yep. Apparently, Dickens was created by AI. Not surprised. Seems like he'd be a cheater.
Does seem shady.
Yep. Let's see. Some AI tools have ability to pull in and utilize real-time search data in their outputs. Technically speaking, how does this work exactly? There's a buffer space, so you could say use 10,000 words as your prompt, and so they would be taking what I assume is called the context of the prompt. So you could say, with this text, quote something from a search or from a web page, do X with it. And so it's that context input that they're playing with. How much buffer space is there? And right now, the buffer space tends to be very limited. So it's hard to do a lot of practical work with it. But with GPT-4, the buffer space went sharply up. And with plugins, it went way up. Because plugins are all about importing data to then use in prompts. So that amount that you could put into the context got larger. And as that value gets larger and larger, we'll be able to do better and better things. Because we could start doing big things. You could start saying, write a whole book, and it would actually write the whole damn book. But right now, it's all limited. Small amounts of words.
Mm-hmm. And it's still processing it through the base, GPT model. So it's the base GPT model looking at the page or pages as supplementary information as part of a prompt. It's not new learning back into the base model yet, at least not that I'm aware of.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. When applying your 25 backlinks to product pages approach, does it matter if those 25 links have no backlinks themselves? I know that Clint likes to say 0 times 0 is 0, but I don't think that's actually how it works. I think it's very close to 0, but non-zero. So I think the amounts that a brand new page with nothing pointed to it is just a tiny floating point value, non-zero. So I don't think it's a zero product game like Clint always says, but it's definitely low power. And they shouldn't be no backlinks because they have footers, right? You can cross-link. This website also owns and operates the hammock store, the pet supply company, the poker table shop. You can state what things you own and operate, and that's a white hat thing to do. And you can go look at CNN or Home Depot or The Gap or any number of companies, Viacom, and see their link wheels because they also own and operate. Let's see. 2 questions. How do you see AI and SEO in 5 years? I cannot predict that. I can't even keep up with the new shit that came out last week. It's changing so fast. I couldn't tell you 5 years because I'd be lying if I was predicting 5 months, honestly. Lee, any predictions on 5 years?
No, because here's the thing. It's go back to what we've talked about is game theory. So I have no idea what new iterations of AI models are going to come out. I have no idea how the search engines are going to incorporate or adapt to those particular changes. So, for example, let's say Google tomorrow said anything that we detect as AI content is out of it because we just can't handle it. Well, that changes the way SEO is done. That changes the way you would utilize AI, or if you would utilize AI, or the type of anti-AI detection things that you'd have to build into your AI. The same thing is true of Bing. We've got right now ChatGPT on the one side, we've got Bard on the other. But I don't know, Ted could be having his own AI developed on the, Ted AI comes out and it blows everything else away, which blows up the game. And maybe TED AI is bought out by Alta Vista because we want to bring that one back, and the whole game has changed. So you can't tell, because it's just like students and teachers trying to detect AI and ban AI and defeat AI detection. It's the same game within the SERPs and everything else. Since we don't know how the players and the tools are going to adapt to that, there's no way for us to know in 6 months where we're going to be, let alone 5 years. But the beautiful thing about it is those of us that test and analyze and use Quora and stuff like that, we have data. We can measure the changes and adapt to them real time. So I'm not as afraid of things changing. I know they're going to change. I just don't know what direction, but I'm prepared to ride the change in any direction.
And your second question, I don't want to talk about people's courses if I haven't taken them. Just because I don't want to misrepresent them, because I don't want to do harm to the course creator, and I don't want to promote them to people who would spend their money when I don't know anything about it, because I could be telling people to waste their money, and I just have no clue. And I don't think that he's telling people to waste their money. I just have no idea. I haven't taken his course, so I have no basis for an opinion on it. And just trying to be fair. So about AI, it seems that the content should be unique. Well, unique maybe, but I would say you could probably put it better. It needs to be less predictable. I mean, is it really uniqueness, Lee, or is it about predictability?
I mean, it depends on what the goal is, because when I heard in the original question, a lot of times I hear unique content from White Hat, the White Hat crowd, saying that if you write unique content, Google values that. And that's not accurate any more than Google penalizes AI content. So the question is, are you looking at unique content to avoid AI detection, to rank, or for some other purpose, to engage your readers? Because the answer would vary depending on which of those goals that you had.
And there's definitely two questions in there, should it be unique to avoid AI detection, which we don't think Google is doing, or should it be unique to rank well in Google, which, we know that Google will filter what it deems a duplicate. So, it depends which question you're asking too. All right. Sorry, Lee, I missed the start. Did some tests on AI detectors I did some tests on AI detectors recently to see which worked and didn't work consistently. Have you done some? And if so, what did you find? I mean, the short of the whole episode is, if it's been quoted a lot, it's gonna misfire as AI content. So the Bible, Dickens,
The Constitution,
Constitution,
all those sort of things.
Yeah.
Children's books.
Yeah. Anything that gets quoted all over is gonna trigger predictability.
Yeah. Now I'll do a little tease because I know Honey's working on some AI detection testing because her concern is that she sees a lot of this out there where AI detection is being used to punish students or fire people who, oh, I wrote that. No, you didn't write that. The AI detector says you didn't write that. And so, the false positives carry consequences. So she's really diving into a little bit more, how is AI detected and which detectors are doing what and, how accurate they are. So hopefully that'll be a Fight Club episode in the near future. But I have no tested data on this.
SEO Beer and Barbecue says the Bible was written by a higher power. And so the interesting thing about that statement is SEO Beer and Barbecue is supposed to have an SEO YouTube show out, and I haven't seen that yet.
Where is that? Where is that?
So time to give you some grief publicly. Where's our episodes? We want more SEO content. So we'll promote your show, but you got to make it.
I'm in it for the beer. I'm just,
All right. Let's see. Thinking of buying a domain 301 redirecting it for link juice. How would you approach it? Don't redirect it to the homepage. That often just gets viewed as a soft 404 and does nothing. The best way to get maximum value is to go link by link for what it has in two places. One would be the URLs that are discoverable through the Wayback Machine, and the other way is to search for links for the website on Google out in the world and find out what those links are and recreate those URLs. At a minimum, redirect those URLs to the most applicable internal page. But note that the redirects diminish the power slightly. So the best approach, the best practice would be to recreate the URLs, make them just respond with content. So that would get you the best power. But if you just want to wholesale, make it easy, minimum effort, then you wildcard redirect everything to an inner page. And that's the quick and dirty way. All right. Caught one live. Congratulations. Happy to have you here. Let's see. Content I type myself gets flagged as AI all the time. It's because you're too predictable, man. You need to throw in some curveballs, surprise people, throw in some sarcasm, zig when they zag.
Use the phrase like my grandmother always said to start a sentence. That'll get you unique.
Yep. Why isn't SEO Google Trends spiking? Is ChatGPT not creating additional SEO competition, as one may suppose? Well, I think a lot of people are using ChatGPT to create very similar content to each other. So there could be some similarity cannibalization from everybody using the exact same tool set for the same keywords in the same way. So I think you got to get creative to get unique stuff out topically. I don't know that Google Trends would change how people search. So Google Trends, the actual product, has got stats on how people search, and I don't think ChatGPT is going to really change those trends quickly. I think people have their habits, and that'll be slow to change.
Yeah, I think Trends predicts search, query volume, not content creation. So you can create 1 billion documents on, SEO Houston, but the search, remains the same unless you're also doing something to manipulate search volumes.
let's see, Ted, you mentioned about getting commercial and informational content on e-commerce pages. How does intent play into that? Can you mix intent? Intent is mixed all over. Go to Amazon, and if you carefully dissect Amazon product pages, you'll find manufacturer information. You'll find data dumps of here are the product dimensions of things. You will find, I mean, there will be a mix of information because those pages need to speak to a multiple of different personas. So you're going to have some people who are impulse buyers. You're going to have some people who are tire kickers. And you need to make sure that you have the resources for both on the page if you want to maximize your conversions. And so this notion that Google is only going to reward, loyalty to a type of content, I don't think it's tested, and I don't think it's well grounded. I think you want to be able to speak to as many marketing personas as you can to get your best conversions. What do you think, Lee?
Yeah, the intent and I have a hard time because I'm not sure that intent exists in the way that people talk about intent. So, my answers tend to be biased on that, but I think that you're, accurate, and that there is in the common understanding of intent, there's a lot of mixed intent pages that rank well. So I don't think there is a danger there. I think that it's the reality of, and we don't know how Google treats it because there hasn't been any sort of testing done on pages that try to rank for a particular term using, different intent-based content creation to see if Google does favor one over the other.
Yeah, the word intent itself has a tell. It's CRO.
Mm.
I mean, you're talking about a conversion the second you mention the word. All right. Let's see. If you go to Google Trends and type in SEO, I thought ChatGPT would make everyone get into the space. Well, ChatGPT doesn't make anyone do anything. So it just writes text based on predictions. So yeah, there's no mechanism that ChatGPT forces people to do things. And Google Trends is just stats on what people are typing into search. So there's a disconnect. ChatGPT isn't forcing anyone to search in a particular way. All right. I think that's all our questions. And so we are 13 over. So I want to thank everyone for joining us. And I know I skipped that Clint question. I think you should ask it again when Clint is here, because I wouldn't want to misrepresent his answer, because Clint would be mad if I did that. So definitely come back next week. Lee, do you have anything to announce? When's your next group starting up?
It's starting next Wednesday. So if people are interested, you've got just a couple of days before we'll close it down. So if you want to reach out, just hit me up on Skype. And if you want information about it, it's testedseotraining.com.
Awesome. And one last one right before the close, meaning collapsible divs show sublinks under page title. Yeah, you can use supplemental content. I suggest the place you start that journey is in the Quality Raters Guidelines, and read it like a skeptic. I'm not telling you to believe what you read there, but just go in there and search around the whole document for all the mentions of supplemental content and see what the raters are told to reward in the scoring for supplemental content. And then think about your SEO and all the things you've not been doing in supplemental content. And then hear what I'm telling you I made an almost 20-year career, successful one at that, in online retail, leveraging sidebars and footers. So, take that as you will, but I wouldn't just, don't disregard the power of unimportant parts of the page. You can work absolute magic and wizardry from very unimportant parts of the page. Any final thoughts, Lee?
Nope, I agree with that. And your
All right.
stuff, I saw even in a presentation you did 2 years ago. You haven't been at that point. You hadn't been in e-commerce in 6 years, and you still had products that you had 25 of the top 30 results in search. So the shit still works even to this day.
Yeah. If you do it right, it's sticky.